The state is
good?
wrong.
We're good? We're good.
Krista, the date is wrong.
Good evening to the public hearing for the tentative budget for 2024 for the town of Tusten. I will open up the public hearing before I go through a bunch of stuff. I'll just answer any questions you've got and we'll try.
Under almost every category, there's an expense labeled personal.
Yep.
What does that mean?
Personal is the actual payroll section.
It's personnel,
It's
but
not-
it's not personal.
Oh, it's not spelled correctly.
No, that's per state guidelines, obviously.
Yeah,
I
we
pointed
can
out the
prove
same
that.
thing.
And it means, that's for,
Personnel. Yeah,
It's how
personal,
they
that's-
ask us to outline it, but the
really?
interpretation should be personnel.
That's. And what does contractual mean?
Contractual is what the expenses for, say, pens, papers. This year I used money contractual to get a laptop.
Okay, so,
And that will depend on which department you're at. So
Yeah.
the board department is different than, say, the water and the sewer departments. Their contractuals can be things like pumping and septics and things like that.
okay, thank you.
Like materials and certain
I'm sorry?
materials and certain
Yes,
people though, people part of it, contractual.
they can be part of that if you're hiring somebody on, under a contractual. Say, if we look in the parks section, you'll see a contractual lawn mowing.
In this discussion now, is it appropriate to ask about a particular line item?
Whichever, anything with the budget, this is what we're here for.
Speak up, please.
So what I would like to know, can you hear me clearly? So what I would like to know, in this one particular line item, there are others, but just dealing with this one item, I would like to know how many children from Tusten youth do not live in Tusten?
What, are you talking about the line item for the Tustin Youth with the grants and,
Yeah, yes.
I-
I know that there are.
yeah, I don't honestly have the answer of how many people partake in the program that are not Tustin Youth.
But it is something that I'm assuming, I shouldn't assume, but I am assuming that if they are in Tusten youth, and I have to preface that by saying, I am totally in favor of youth. I have been through it ad nauseam, and I don't want to go through my history, etc. So that there's no bias. I just want to know financially, budget-wise. There are other towns that have registration specifically for their youth to participate in certain activities, and you have to be you have to be a resident of that town. And what I'm asking is, we are, even though some things come from Sullivan, some things from the county, there are things that come from our budget as well, and taxpayer budget. And what I wanted to know, for Tustin youth, yay. But for non-Tustin youth, we should not be paying for non-Tustin youth. If they live out of state, if they live in another county, if they live in another community.
To the best of my knowledge, when they have an event that requires payment, like when they go to Kalahari or something like that, there's a two-tier fee for that. The Tustin Youth is one fee if they're registered within the township, and then there's another fee for those that are not there, but are partaking in the deal that they get. So that they're,
Okay, so that's great.
Right.
I'm glad to hear that. But does that cover across the board for anything that's dealing with Tustin youth? That they're.
like when they do say their 4th of July down here, nobody, to my knowledge, gets charged to walk through the door of that event.
Who pays for that?
That's done mostly it's done by fundraising, which is the local businesses.
Okay,
I think we should have a presentation from Tusten Youth to the public.
I'm happy to
We could
answer
do
those.
that.
I'm happy as town clerk. Thank you.
I think we
We
could-
can answer the question. But I can't.
I think they're good questions and a lot of it could be answered by a presentation. I forgot to mention it, too.
I'm sorry?
I said I thought it would be beneficial for the public if there's a presentation from Tusten Youth.
Crystal,
Okay.
I have no problem with Crystal. I mean.
Okay,
Yeah.
I've reined Crystal in on which hat she's allowed to wear, but
Right.
at this point, I think it's a valid question, and so we're in the budget. It's not so much a town meeting where we're making decisions. If it helps somebody understand better, I think that's
So-
good.
Tusten Youth, we receive monies through grants that go through Sullivan County and the state. And that money goes to the town and the town then appoints us. Our agreement with the town is we do spend money on events such as 4th of July. But we do spend a substantial, I believe, in the area of around 10,000 for Tusten youth children only. If you pay taxes in the town of Tusten, your children are considered youth. So we went to Hershey Park, we go skiing, we pay for the children's tickets. 19 years and under, and that's what's allowed through the county and the state. For anything other than that, if somebody else wants to go to Tusten, they are able to get a group rate. And we obtain those group rates because we have there's that 60 kids going. So the company gives us a group rate and we're allowed to give that group rate to other people. But we do not pay per head for anyone that is non-Tusten youth. And we do our best to make sure that we can fund events such as 4th of July, mainly through donations. This past year, Tusten Youth put only what did we put? I think we put 4,000 towards 4th of July. The rest of the 24,000 was all donations that we went out and obtained. For that exact reason.
Okay, thank you. That answers that part of my question. How many the question that I had asked prior to that was, how many Tusten youth are in Tusten Youth? Are in Tusten. If that would have been Tusten.
It depends on the numbers. We have up to about 300 children in the town of Tusten. They don't all go to every single piece of event. Some we see,
So you
some we
have-
don't always
I'm
see.
sorry. So you have a roster of approximately 300 children up to age 19 that live in the town of Tusten.
Depending on the year, yeah. I can't just give you a list of 300 names right now, no. But if they live in Tusten, they register for Tusten.
So you're saying that give and take, there are about 300 children
Mhm.
in the town of Tusten.
Mhm.
We were trying to look up the number to see what the count was in, say, 1960 to do a comparison.
Reason it's hard to give you that solid number, we have 147 that go to Sullivan West School District, for example. Every year, we find more and more that just moved here or that homeschool. And even though we're a small community, they don't know that we exist. Some people have been here for 5 years and they go, I homeschool my kids, I've got 5 kids. I had no idea. Tusten
And you've
was
still
a thing.
got Tustin youth that go to
We
Homestead
have
or to
Homestead.
Homestead or to
Okay.
Grant.
So we've got a lot of kids that we don't always, we're still trying to find them.
Obviously, my concern is not with Tusten Youth, because I think it's fabulous if you have the programs for Tusten, and I recommend this before I take the view because you were answering. But it is very important to know that it is the youth of Tusten and not of Pennsylvania, county, or any other town that is benefiting by it. I saw the line item was $21,000. No, what is that 21?
So, and we guarantee because the town, the taxpayers are giving that 10,000. That we want to make sure that 10,000 stays with Tusten children. The other 10, because it comes to the state and the county, it goes through those channels, the state and county have told us, if they live in the state of New York, specifically Sullivan County, that's acceptable usage, so your community event, you can claim that. And that is it affecting your tax bill?
Because what you
So
will
it's
see a
because the money
revenue
comes
side,
back.
you will see a revenue side, and you will see a funding side, the funding revenue, and then the expense side. Our budget from Tusten, the first 10,000, that gets reimbursed by the state. The next 10,000 is the actual budgeted that she's talking about. The Tusten, our youth used to get in the budget up until last year, $10,000. That 10,000 was reimbursed between the county and the state. Last year, I asked the board to double it to $20,000 so that we get the $10,000 back from the state and the county. We're using $10,000 of our taxpayer money because we were seeing more programs and more kids get involved in it. And we thought that it was a beneficial thing. And what we found is by doing that, it's allowed the committee to go out and they start to get more money back in grants because of all the things that they're doing. So we've got a budget line of 21,000. We might get back 15,000 of that, towards that. But 10,000 of that is taxpayer funded money. The other 10,000 comes back. And there's a question in the back.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering if it's possible to get a more detailed account of how what the breakdown is of these expenses, not just because to use, but in general. In other words, I understand that this money is being used for various events and we don't know exactly how many kids, but is it possible to get any more detail? Because these things are really too much.
Yeah, I don't see, I mean, the finances are public knowledge. To get a broken down expenditure of it, I'm sure that the committee can do that. Yes, Jill.
So when I was in my 20s and my manager was talking to me about budgets, I was like, it's so scary, numbers, and he said, no, budgets tell stories. So I'm curious at a high level, like I love the details too, but at a really strategic level, what are the strategic priorities, that are driving the budget spending choices? We've had a lot of, excuse me, stuff going on, like the infrastructure stuff and the cultural stuff. And
if you go through the budget, you're going to see a couple of lines that took very large jumps. The Tusten Volunteer Ambulance Corps took a large jump. They took a $10,000 jump. They wanted $100,000. They need $100,000, but the answers that we got didn't satisfy the board to say, okay, we're gonna jump on that. You will see that the rent for the state police barracks jumped up. Part of the idea of that was that we haven't done anything. We haven't changed that rent. And it's part of the volunteer ambulance corps. So it's kind of, we weren't going to give them one whole lump sum of money. As one board member says, well, throwing money at it's not going to help it. There's some other questions the board needs answered before we can actually dive into that a little bit more. Yes, your rates for your sewer, your water, that's all driven by infrastructure. Most everything else that was in here stayed pretty well flat or within a few percentages. We did have, highways always. One of the things that we had, our bank bond 1940.2 is in there. You'll see a large increase in that. That was to pay off the bank bond. The board wanted to increase the unsafe building amount in there so that we've had a lot of questions that were asked about what the board's doing about some of the derelict buildings. So let's put the money in there and see if we can't, can we do it this year? We don't know, but at least have the unsafe buildings, so at least have the money in the budget so that if we can move that fast, we've got the money already budgeted to do it.
And Park took a big jump.
Parks took a very large jump. Part of that is what we hear at the meetings. Part of that is also the fact that lawn mowing is become quite an issue. Something that Glennie used to do for us for between $4,000 and $6,000. That's probably going to come in somewhere around $20,000 this year, just in that.
Line item park. What are all the parks?
We've got the veterans. Parks kind of takes up quite a bit of things. It takes Kirk's Road. It takes the Veterans Park, things that are done down on the deck, and obviously the park down on the flats. Lawn mowing, garbage removal, flowers, maintenance for those things, covers quite a bit of it. We also, we've also heard about things that need to get done down in the flats as far as like the flower planters and things like that. So, we're gonna have to hire somebody to do these things. So we said, let's, it's budget time. Let's put it in there.
That's what I'm doing as a volunteer.
We need more volunteers.
What?
We need more volunteers.
Okay, were there any things where just like, you're like, look, we can't, some hard notes, right? Strategic is as much about what you say no to, really what you say no to versus what you say yes to. So, because you want to do everything. Were there any notes that were difficult?
Yeah. Pay raises. Was the first one, and then some of our departments that wanted larger contractuals.
And I think this will be, I know I'm taking a lot of time, but this last question I think will probably benefit everyone. So the way it's done, just surmising from what you shared, is that people ask, and then you as a board review and determine.
It's funny you asked that because it was done a little bit different before I came back in. But the way it's done now is I put a request form to each of the department heads. They fill it out for what they want or what they need. Those have to come back to me, and then I put together a tentative budget to bring into the board. And then the board sits and they go through it line by line to determine what is and isn't needed. Some of the things that are asked for on the request forms don't make it to what the board gets to see. Some things that are in parks and things like that aren't department head issues, that's what I can put in and I can present to the board, and then they can decide whether they want to do it that way or not. And then after a couple of meetings, we come up with a preliminary budget, and then hopefully we come up with an adopted budget. But it is a process that involves everyone that either is a department head or an employee of the town, and then the board.
Thank you for all that time. Ruben.
Yeah.
I'm having trouble trying to understand parts in the budget where, they don't. And I.
Which party is?
It's like, yeah. Almost double.
If you can give me an item number, that would help me a lot to answer your question.
And that was something we spoke to, but I guess parks, I'm having trouble understanding how something in 1 year can pass for.
Give me a number off of here, and then I can address what you're asking.
Parks is 42%, or what?
There's an A number or
How can I start with my notes from reading it online?
oh, okay.
42.
Look at those numbers. I think that's what it's done.
Well, I believe one was a 42% increase on the park, and the other was,
I'll find it.
Those aren't being.
I think it was A 710.4.
Ben and everyone, we are getting requests from Zoom that people come to speak closer to the microphone because they're having a hard time hearing.
Is the park and playground contractual? I think Ben kind of,
Yeah, A 7110.4, that includes our mowing expenses. That also includes anything that we're going to be doing as an improvement down there.
I'm just having trouble with a 52% increase for that, and also,
What that was based on, ma'am, what that was based on was last year when we put our mowing out to bid that we've been paying $6,000 and $7,000 for, and it came back at $19,000. So we had to then turn around and reduce what was being done in order to make it fit within the budget. So the increase that you're seeing there is based on what the bids came back last year, in the hopes that we'll be able to get all of the work done that we wanted to do.
For mowing for the parks with 19,000, is that what you're telling me?
They mow 2 cemeteries. They mow the park that's down on the flats. They mow a vacant piece of property that's down on the flats. They mow Kirk Road. They mow the 2 triangles. They do the bank cleanups around the Veterans Park. And then they do the guardrails along Kirk Road and yeah, that's included within the contractual of the. Yeah, it's not, when parks is not just the park that is down there. That includes all of the things. The cemeteries, the Beaver Brook Cemetery and the 10 Mile Cemetery, they get to twice a year, once in the beginning and once in the end. The one that's at the 10 Mile takes about 8 man hours and it has to be weed whacked.
And
So
that's state law.
that's because the town is responsible for them.
And I think an important thing that Ben mentioned, but maybe not everyone heard, is that the number was prior to that generously low due to a citizen who was providing a service for which we were not paying market rate. So that's a huge part of the spike.
Market rate correction.
Correct. Yes, very generous.
Yes, Star.
I just wanted to know what has happened to and where is all the equipment that was removed from the park in the flats?
The multi-generational part of it, that was taken up to the town highway barn so that we can hopefully in the future get that reestablished.
Reestablished. Okay, so it's just in violence.
Yes.
Thank you.
The problem was we couldn't find somebody to come in and do the work in a timely manner. What's the other thing to do? We're hearing that it looks terrible, that it's unusable, that it's unsafe. So it comes out until we can do something with it, but it's up the highway part.
Part B of that question, does that mean it's going back to the same places that was removed from?
I don't know that.
And that's not a budget.
Yeah.
The mound is being installed in part of that.
Yeah. The mound is being installed in part of that. So we don't know if it's going to go back in the exact same spot. Cass, before I go to you, I got Star.
Just wanted to say, I think what we've heard here tonight is that we'd like a lot more specificity on what's being put in and why it's being put in. And, you know, this public hearing was scheduled for 15 minutes. Anybody that asks a question, I mean, it's.
It was never scheduled for 15 minutes. We didn't put a time on it.
Workshop was supposed to be 6:30, right?
No, we said the hearing started at 6:30, the public hearing.
Okay, anyway, the point is, I think that there's been ample demonstration that people want to see more detailed information on what's going where and why. And I'd like to ask again, I've said this about the agendas, when you come into a skeletal, that you can't really see what is all of the ins and outs. If you could put more information in about what's happening, I think you would get less people sitting here asking questions, or at least it would take a little less time to answer them.
I think the time is fine for the questions because they're all good questions. I mean, I understand what they're asking as far as parks and a breakdown of it. I don't think you're going to see a park breakdown in an 18-page budget. You know, contractuals, when they ask, you know, what's the supervisor's contractual? Why does he have $1,200? That's my mileage. That's if I were to claim a cell phone, if I was to do a school. I mean, do you see that in the county? Does the county, when you were in the county, did they take their budget and they broke down each year contractuals down into other lines so they could look at it? That's why we have the hearing, and that's why we can get the information like was asked about the youth.
You do have it on Zoom this time, and kudos to you for that. But if somebody can't come here and have the time to go through this, which maybe they don't understand because it's not detailed enough, I just think it could be easier on everybody if it was a little more,
It's been up online, Star. Anybody can ask a question.
it's been up online with, you're gonna go through all these items, but how many people, how many parts, who's coming from where? I just don't think that that's a clear statement of why this is justified. To justify the document.
Okay,
Next question. Cass, you had one.
My question is on page 8. On the demolition of unsafe building.
Max, if you could speak a little louder.
Oh, sure. My question, I'm wearing new hearing aids so I can hear myself really well. Annoying. The question is on page 8 for the demolition of unsafe buildings, the 20,000. Could you
8/15/70, trying to help you.
Thank you.
what building is that, or buildings?
There are none that are slated right now. I know Jim had brought up the one that's down on 4th Street. It could be any buildings, but the board wanted to fund that particular line to make sure that we weren't going to be slowed down because, well, we didn't budget the money.
Yeah.
I think
And
20,
just to be clear, that is not money that is currently spoken for, but it would potentially cover costs were one of the buildings to be demolished.
What building is that what you're saying?
We,
no, I don't know that we know that. We came up with,
The buildings that are down in Lexington Lake that are falling apart. And I know that's a whole sticky.
yeah, that's going to depend on where they are and what public highways they're on.
Oh, public highway.
I believe so. I would have to check with Ken to be sure of.
We'll talk more about.
Yeah. Absolutely. But the reason was, the board said we've got this conversation that's going on. People are asking these questions. Where's the money going to come from? So we made sure we put it in. Anybody online?
Is that Eugene?
Yes. Well, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Some of these answers have been illuminating. The answers you provided on the Tusten Youth were very helpful because just being kind of an outsider, having not really looked at the budget previously, I was to understand that 20,000 was coming from the Tusten taxpayers and 10,000 from the county. And you have, corrected my thoughts in that we get a reimbursement. So in fact, last year, it was a 100% increase from 10,000 to 20,000. But the total budget, in fact, is not 30 as I had assumed by looking at the budget, but in fact, 10,000 went back. The 10,000 from the county gets reimbursed to the town. So with that said, that 100% increase last year, we do have down in the current budget 7.5% increase this year, which is a little bit surprising given the fact that such a large increase last year. But I think the discussion of a general separate meeting discussing how the youth group is formed and the membership and the financial oversight, I think would be a great idea because that would allow a lot more understanding. And I think it would ultimately lead to greater embracement by the community to get behind the organization. Because again, as an outsider, it's very difficult to understand how these things operate. And then moving on to the parks, the 52% increase, jumps out at you after last year having a 42% increase. But your answer that Craig was charging under market rates really illuminates the position that we're in and makes it a lot more understandable. And I think the fact that I never realized that the town was on the hook for the 2 cemeteries. So I find that very interesting and very helpful again, because it makes things, while again, when you're just looking at the black and white, and you see a 52, just summarily going over any budget, and you see a 52% increase, you say, wait a second, what's going on here? But when you have that further information, I find it very helpful. And the last point I would like to make is, another number that really jumps out at me is the $80,000 on the ARPA funds. And I would, my expectation as a taxpayer and a member of the community is I'd really like to see a vigorous separate discussion on the potential use of those funds in terms of some strategic thinking that would give the community and the town some longer term benefits, possibly in the area of public safety or broadband communication or whatever the needs may be of the town. And I think that would be very important to have, ideas flow in and a bit of discussion, because it's a kind of unique one-time opportunity for the community for the $80,000. And as I investigated online, it's pretty much a broad ability to spend that money. I mean, it's not a very narrow avenue that is given by the government in which it can be spent. So I think that creates a lot of opportunities that would be unique, and hopefully that would allow us some benefits for the community, long-term benefits of strategic importance. So thank you for that. That's all.
Anybody else online?
Kathy,
Yes.
just following up on Eugene's suggestion, will that be considered?
I mean, if people have got anything that they would like to see, that the board would be open to listening to it. Some of the money has been used for the sewer, the water department, and putting the new generator that's down at well number 1. So some of that has been used on the infrastructure already. We've taken the rest of it and put it in the budget so that people would see it there, and instead of just being a number that's known as, that's an asset that we've got no liability assessed to, we actually have it in the budget. So, yes.
Following up with that, the ambulance asked for $100,000.
They did, yes.
They could have 10.
Yes.
So what if would you consider some of that ARPA money, considering the safety and health issue?
Personally, I would not consider it, because there's questions that arise within the ambulance itself and how they're being operated and where they're operating, that I would want to answer the one board member that said, is throwing money at it going to help it? And the answer is no, it's not going to help it. We need to dig into why there are these issues, and we need to correct those issues. The ambulance is doing a great job. They've got a lot of volunteers. They work very, very hard. They're so understaffed that some of the things that they can do to help themselves aren't getting done. So we need to address why they're not having the ability to raise the funds that they need before we start throwing money at it. And then those root causes never get taken care of. There's accountability now, and we're still not making it.
They're not making what? They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing?
No, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, but the ambulance district, and it's not a special district, but the ambulance district per se covers 2 states. It covers multiple municipalities. Are each of those municipalities paying a fair share to make sure that this ambulance corps keeps operating? What we're finding is they are not. So if you're upset because we're going to give some money to the lawnmower, how upset are you going to be when we give $100,000 to the ambulance corps to find out a municipality is giving 0 money in for that service? That's why we're not going to throw $80,000 of ARPA money at it. Right.
Certainly, give them the opportunity.
Well, we've been in discussions with them now for several months in order to get it. And they are working, the ambulance corps is working on addressing what we've brought to them and what we're asking. but it wasn't done in time for budget, so we're just,
Well, like, going to the future, like, within the next year, this is the budget for 2024.
Mhm.
Could you allocate a little bit more to them so that they would, have some incentive maybe?
No, their incentive is, we're not giving you what you want because you need to cross the T, dot the I, and get the other municipalities to do their share to make sure that you survive. Because the truth of it is, if you don't serve those other municipalities, you have enough money to survive on what we give you.
I mean, I can make the decision that it serves a number of counties if they're not contributing.
They contract with the municipalities that they work for. Yes, Iris.
Is there some kind of public meeting that can bring in all the components of who is supposed to be represented, paying their share?
And that's what the ambulance corps is doing now. The president of the ambulance corps has been working very hard with the other municipalities that they serve and trying to work out their contracts with them to get more money from them. It's very hard to pay nothing and then all of a sudden say, hey, you got to pay. It's very hard because if we're getting ambulance service for next to nothing, why would we want to pay more for it if this town's paying for it?
You either pay your share like everybody else does, or you don't get coverage.
Well, unfortunately, that's the stance that this board took when they said we're not throwing money at it. You're going to have to figure out what you want to do.
Is there any public hearing or something that the public can listen like this? This is a great meeting.
I don't know that the ambulance board does that. I know the fire department, because they are a special district, they have to have the same public hearing we do in order to get their monies. But they're not the ambulance corps is not a special district here in the town of Tusten. It's covered under our general fund. If it was a special district and they wanted $100,000 and their budget was 50, okay, we'll give you the $100,000 because all we do is put it on the taxes, and then each person that's within that special district has to pay the tax. Ours is not a special district. Okay.
Are you saying that the ambulance, if it comes to the ambulance corps, it's their responsibility to go and grab the other people and take them and say, you guys have to compost?
Well, they contract with other municipalities. So they need to, when they negotiate a contract, they need to negotiate a contract that's going to give them enough money to properly operate. In New York State, what happens is, yes, the town of Tusten pays for this ambulance, but because we have so few volunteers for the ambulance, our Tusten ambulance can be in Monticello. Our Tusten ambulance can be down in the town of Highland. They don't get to charge extra for that. They can't charge that particular municipality for it. It's called mutual aid. Much like if our ambulance has to take somebody over to Honesdale because they've taken a Tusten resident over, and then their second ambulance get called and they're out. When that third ambulance calls, it might come from the town of Callicoon or the town of Delaware, or it might come from Highland, or it might come from Lumberland. The mutual aid doesn't. So those things they can't charge for, but it eats up their budget. So when they negotiate their contracts with people like the town of Tusten who they serve, those are the things that they have to make these municipalities understand that they've got a budget. Some of it is beyond their control, but what isn't beyond their control, you need to pay for. And our ambulance corps does a good job. My last conversations with them about a month ago, they were hitting 90% of their calls. 90% of their calls meant that they made it on the first run to their call. Didn't need a mutual aid to come to them. And they're very understaffed, so they do a great job. I just think other municipalities need to step up and pay them for it. Yes, Star, and then you.
I'm just getting a little confused about this. Like the ambulance corps charges or contracts with Tusten for a certain rate that covers their expenses if it's just Tusten. but they're bound to help other, counties or other cities or towns by this mutual aid
Yeah.
provision. So if they're required to do this, how are they going to negotiate with these people that they have to pay more? If this is something that is accepted, it's not contractual.
I'm talking about municipalities in Pennsylvania that we serve that aren't paying.
Okay, so,
So how does our ambulance tell them how much to charge? They have an operating budget. They know how much it costs to operate. Mutual aid is one of those things that you don't know if it's gonna be $100 this year or $200 this year, but you have an idea of about what it'll be. You put it in your operating budget. When you negotiate your contracts, well, if I do 50% of my calls in this municipality and 25 in this municipality and 25 in this municipality, I'm gonna take my 100% budget and I'm gonna divide it up 50, 25, and 25. If they don't like it, then let them find another ambulance corps. Much like has happened in the county, the counties, the whole county is this way.
okay, I'm a little lost, but I think.
Believe me, I was more lost than you when I started with this stuff, with the ambulance.
In our discussions that I've been part of, I find that the labyrinth that is just my own health insurance goes up proportionately to the area that's covered, including things, the way we get bills a year after service. That is reflected sometimes in the compensation and the way it comes into the organization when health insurance is involved. You are right to be confused.
We haven't even got into Medicaid, Medicare, and ambulance services.
And
what
the
they
fact
pay
that
back.
distance is not part of the formula.
So what you're saying is, there is the standard that people are being charged or should be charged, and yet in these mutual aid situations, it seems like you don't have that standard. You can't demand.
You'll still get their Medicaid's part of it, but you're not getting paid the extra mileage, the hours that they're gone, the fuel. There's other things that go in. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, unfortunately. But no,
The mutual aid is within Sullivan County.
yes.
The concern we have is that we're not gonna throw, I hate to use word, we're not gonna allocate more money until they figure out what the Pennsylvania municipalities should be paying them. Because there's no incentive, if Tusten allocates more money, there's less incentive for them to try and get the money from Milanville or
Damascus.
Damascus.
Yes.
I have a question related to that about education, about considering money for that, because I looked at volunteering with an ambulance service because I trained as a medic in Florida and worked as a medic in Florida, and when I moved up here about getting my New York license so that I could volunteer here, but the travel, the nearest place that I could find it would do that, but this was not tenable for me with my work situation. So, I mean, would you consider, you mentioned there were so few volunteers, of having something locally, like at the school, or someone that would renew, or that would train, and put out some medics in this community that would be here? I mean,
We have nothing, the town board does not have anything to do with the training. That's all done by the Department of Health. So it would be through the Department of Health, and I don't know if they would come out here, but we've never asked that question.
appropriate use for like a training to get people out. I mean, I don't know, I'm just one person, but I would think if there was something available locally, there would be other people that would be interested in the training that would, provide the time for
They do the training right now at White Lake. I thought the EMT training.
They do the training all over. It's the matter of people having the time to do the training.
Yeah, I
And
forget
having
what the
time to
EMT training is right now.
trying to find places and, it was very, very difficult to find anything.
And that is one of the things that our volunteer services are finding out. The fire department, just to become not even an interior firefighter. The amount of training that's required of them you know, that amount of time, forget the emergency calls, just the amount of time to get trained, and then the time to retain your training each year. And in the medical part of it, it's even harder. They got more drivers than they have EMTs, and there's a reason for that.
I mean, I'm just saying, I'm one person, I was willing to try to do that. There are things going on in the area that apparently are not easily available to find. Maybe if you don't put, stuff on the roadside or something that people would like to put together and around to the public.
Would it help, would it talk to Craig?
Yeah. Craig Burkle is your president of the ambulance corps, so he'll take any and all volunteers.
Yeah.
New York lights, I mean, I would be like,
I think he's a good call for you. I mean, just to let you know what you need.
Who that was?
Craig Burton.
Do we have any questions on the floor further?
Can I just respond? If you do find out anything and I can be a part of helping move that communication forward, I'm happy to help however I can.
I think there's a lot of things people in the community would try to do more if they just knew how to make those connections and what was available. And I can tell you from my own need that it's been difficult trying to figure that out.
Thank you for trying.
Welcome to New York. Anybody on one more? Yes. Gene.
Yes, given that the banks are finally paying some interest rates, has the board changed its strategy in terms of how it's parking any reserves or any monies that it has on account to enjoy the better interest rates that are now available?
What I requested from the board and they approved was last year. There's municipal rates that you're able to get into, and all of the towns had done that. They had moved into these high interest accounts. I went and spoke with the president of Catskill Hudson Bank. They did not offer that interest rate, but they offered it to us, I believe, within a quarter point of what was being offered. And it was my position that I believe that Tusten is one of the larger depositors in Catskill Hudson Bank. So I requested that the board keep that money in our local bank because we had already lost two banks in town. And I think that us taking several $1 million out of a bank was not going to be, to send it to Albany or to another bank for the quarter point. I think we could use the bank here.
No, I agree 100%. And on a lighter note, hopefully, it's interesting to note that the dog catcher and the historian were at the same budget level, but the historian now has gone up. Where does that leave the poor dog catcher?
Vacant.
Vacant. Will the $500 be enough to entice somebody, Ben, or will you possibly have to go to the $1,000 that the historians get?
The historian unfortunately, the historians actually don't get that money as a pay. It's a more of a control for them to do stuff with. They don't use any of it. But I would like to see the Historical Society. I know that there's going to be a change in the coming year with the board of the Historical Society. So I'm hoping that they might do some things within town to promote the history a little bit more, whether it's moving displays or billboards or there's a lot of history and we don't have it anywhere in town. It's stuck in the basement of a library in a 8x10 room.
No, I support that. I think it's important. And the dog catcher, is there any hope of getting someone at $500 or?
And that's another contractual. It's per pickup of dog. It covers the mileage and it does that. And to be honest with you, if we got somebody that was busy and they needed more money and they were good at it, we take money out of our contingency or some other part of the budget in order to make sure we got them.
Plan is much clearer for picking up dogs than it is people. With the ambulance.
Thank you.
Iris,
I wanted to know, where are we in terms of bond or some financial something for the problems that we're having with the water pipes and
we haven't begun the bond with the water project yet. We're still waiting the Department of Health, and I believe the email came today. Is that, I didn't read it, from Joe Golan. Is that for to begin the water tower, or is that something else?
I didn't read it.
Okay. We're waiting for the Department of Health to approve our request to replace the water tower. So we have not bonded any money until we put shovels to the ground.
Property's been surveyed though, so it's
Yeah.
all set to go.
On the same note, the Main Street Lake Erie project, which we are bonding $800,000 for, we still have not bonded that because we are awaiting, hopefully, a reduction in interest rates. So what we've been doing is using our other town funds in order to pay the bills as they come in, because we've got the reserves built up. And hopefully we can get a cheaper rate for the bond.
in order of things, the water tower is first.
Water tower was found to be the most needed.
That's first.
That's for,
I'm not disputing that. I'm
right, no, that's,
organism in my head. So that's first. What comes second and what comes third?
I would have to pull the report out to tell you what it is, but it's going to be water mains and fire hydrants on the water mains. There's a 7-step program. I don't have it in front of me, and it's about twice that size, so. And to be honest with you,
Mhm.
I'm a little bit worried. It's a $7.5 million project. We had a leak up on School Street. When they dug up the main, we found that the main was sitting on bedrock. Once they open up the ground, I don't know what they're gonna find. But our $7.5 million, I'm hoping will do the project that was presented to us. But looking at the costs and some of the things that we've already run into, we might only get about 80% of that project done for that same $7.5 million.
Mhm.
And the tasks of the project have been prioritized to reflect whatever we find
And
out
to
the
give
real
you,
prices are.
just to give you an idea of some of the things that we run into. We had and I know people get upset when they see the big TAM truck come in to shut down the water or to dig on Main Street. When I got to the leak on School Street, it was estimated to be 90 gallons a minute, which meant it was coming right from the water tower. So, okay, shut the water tower off. They never put a valve in at the water tower when it was put in. The nearest valve was at the intersection of Erie and School Street. If they shut that off, they were gonna have to shut down the water on Main Street, even though it wasn't close to each other, which would have meant shutting the businesses down. So these are the things that we run into that it just compounds itself. So they sleeved it. They came back, they put a valve in at the tower. They had the other one. So now when it came back to time to repair it, they were able to shut the water off just on School Street for a short period of time and didn't have to do a boil water. So,
All very involved.
yeah, it just, I think sometimes we sit up here and we just say, oh, this was done, and not understanding that, what it is.
Cutoff valves are an integral part of the project.
I'm sorry?
Cutoff valves are an integral part.
I don't know what they were thinking in 1930 when they put in the water system.
Costs $50.
Really?
What we're finding with the sewer department is we do not have enough manholes to do inspections. That was in the 80s, so.
And the water tower that we're replacing now was built when Truman was president. And it was supposed to be replaced when Jimmy Carter was president. And so, these are old,
And it was supposed to be painted on the inside when the year that I left in 2009.
Yeah,
And that hasn't been done.
a lot of things that haven't been done. You have a 100-year-old water system And this is, you read the newspaper, we're not alone. This kind of infrastructure.
That we weren't trying.
When I heard that there are no fire hydrants that are basically usable, and any kind of pressure on those fire hydrants can just blow the pipe. That's a little scary.
Your fire department does very well with what they've got.
They have.
And,
It's amazing.
proof of that is the fact you still have Rasmussen's building on Main Street.
But you have the rest of Main Street.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Like in what?
Or that you have the rest of
I
Main
think so
Street.
that the rest of Main Street is
Right.
in there.
Do I have any other questions online or on the floor as far as the budget? Yes, Bernie.
Thank you guys. Budget looks pretty good. And how much work goes into it?
I didn't mention it before. I did, for those that don't know, municipalities have to stay within what's known as a cap, that's set by New York State Comptroller's Office. It's based on all sorts of different things. Our cap for this fiscal year was $1,403,000. We came in at $1,398,000. That's the 3% property tax cap you always hear about. And that's based on previous years, what you've done, any carryovers that you've got. So we were able to start the process under the budget cap and finish under the budget cap. So unlike some towns that are 17% before they start.
Yeah, that's, I mean,
I'd just like to say that this is the 10th year that I have been involved with a preliminary public hearing for budget, and you should all congratulate yourself. Never has anybody, as many people shown up and asked such intelligent questions. You really.
The budget's the most aggravating thing because I really do spend a lot of time with the budget. And
As a fiscal officer.
I spend a lot of time with the board with the budget. And I really prepare so that the people come and ask me questions. And before this year,
Nobody else.
I would sit here and I'd be like, I spent all this time. Nothing happened.
You didn't waste any time this year.
No.
We're here.
I'm happy.
but I think like,
You don't ask. Oh, no, it's closed now. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I guess I was just curious about the 5K for the beautification.
Which one?
I have the number right.
Oh, okay.
A 7150.4. Page 6.
Yep. That purchasing of plants, flowers, trees.
Is that because like we used to get money, the beautification group used to get money directly from Sullivan Renaissance, and then when they merged with Sullivan, are we covering more of those costs?
Yes, the Sullivan 180 is, but so this is money that we can continue to use. I think if the beautification came to us and said, I need $1,000 for flowers.
Yeah, this is just like you said, to continue what's been going on.
And that was, we increased that from 3 to 5. We just got more areas to do.
I think it's interesting that, like Jill, you said, a budget is a story. It's the narrative for what we do and what the town, what's interesting is you've all asked really good questions, but nobody asked anything about the highway, which is what?
Half the budget.
70%, whatever. That's where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. There's this, when we approve tax, like, okay, this and the water department, okay, $25 for Craig's, $85,000 for a. No, right. Well, I'm not saying it's like, when you go through that, you realize it's the highway that really, that's a good chunk of it, and it's kind of stuff that it's daunting because it's like, oh my God, that thing. But that's still, it's part of the narrative, the story that you said.
Any other questions?
Comment,
Sure.
all of us. I have learned.
Don't forget Jean.
Thank you, Jean. I have learned a lot. And I appreciate everything. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's easy enough to break down. I mean, it's. If you're looking for more breakdowns, everything's, this is what you hear every month when we break down how much we spend. Do we want to close the public hearing? Is there any more questions? I can close. Do we want to
Close the public hearing.
second?
Second.
All in favor? Do you, is there anything that you want to go over as far as the questions that have been asked or changing on anything? Do we want to pass the preliminary budget, make it the adopted? Do you want to leave it for Monday or Tuesday of next week?
Would increasing the dog give us more flexibility?
I think it would just be easier to take it out of the $12,000 contingency money.
If-
Okay, if it needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a per occurrence.
All right.
We have a contingency line that's in the budget. I believe it's 12,500, and that's for things like
Yeah.
the dog catcher. The things that come up. The mowing turns out to be too much money, or
I think we should follow up on Eugene's idea about the community forum for how that grant money is used, but I think it probably should wait until we know the structure and makeup of the next board. So,
I think we can adopt the budget. Does anybody have a problem adopting the budget? And that's one less thing for Tuesday, because we have a presenter, right?
yes, and it would also keep us closer to the time when it needs to be adopted.
So we need a motion to approve the preliminary.
A motion to accept the preliminary budget for 2024.
I'll move that.
A second. All in favor? Aye, opposed?
Okay.
Motion.
Ha, 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 you did it.
No. Meeting reminders, the ZBA meeting has been canceled for this month. Our regular meeting will be next Tuesday, the 14th at 6:30. And there is a planning board meeting apparently on the 28th at 7:30.
They don't make the call until 2 weeks prior, so they haven't decided if they're canceling or not yet.
They've got another
They're
day.
planning. Yeah.
And there's a presenter next week, next, or not.
Yes, we'll have,
Are there 2 percenters?
well, we're looking for somebody to present for the youth also, right?
Yeah,
That would be
Okay.
I
great.
think that would be three.
You have Sullivan 180, and you have someone from the youth bureau coming and from the county. And then if you want to.
Oh, okay. Oh, with this Victoria,
Okay.
thank you.
And I don't have last
However,
year's,
Thing, I would like to be able to do that.
I didn't ask.
I wasn't asking either.
Slap my hand. They were looking for someone to do a presentation for the youth commission, and I said I would be happy to do it. And they both said they weren't asking. They prefer me better in the seat.
I'm just trying to go real quick into last year to see what we need for the agenda. I don't believe we've got anything special coming up on the agenda.
Thank you. Do roadways.
Yeah, we do. We're
Coupling.
gonna have a contract from National Fish and Wildlife.
Okay. We'll have that by then?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I signed off some papers today. I think that's all I had to do for today.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Uh-huh.
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody.